Urban Home Contents interview with Max Schoberg. Take one. Okay, well, welcome to a very, very rough setup of Urban Home Contents. Right now, you have a bundle of wires in your lap.
Yep.
Hopefully, that lav works. We're going to see.
Looks like it. I see stuff bouncing around on the recorder. So
that's good. That's good. And I have this phone in my pocket that's recording my sound right now too. So we're just winging it. We're going to see what happens. And right now we're at a brewery where there's a lot of noise, but that's part of the casual raw setting of this interview. So first off the bat, are you working on anything right now that?
Well, right now I'm actually prepping for a feature that starts in about a week and a half up in Chisholm, Minnesota. So up in the Iron Range, the Ironbound Studios.
Okay.
So that should be a good time.
Oh, I've heard about that. So when you go up to Chisholm, Minnesota, do you get like a hotel and place to stay?
Yeah, I think what they're doing. I'm the AC. I'm the first assistant camera on that shoot. I think what they're having us do is they're probably going to effectively Airbnb several houses. So then it'll be kind of semi-shared but semi-private quarters basically for everyone involved.
Okay.
So we're not sharing rooms or bunk beds or anything
sharing
like that.
Tents.
But yeah,
I think that's or vans.
Yeah.
That's gonna be nice. Whenever I'm on set with you, you're always doing something not necessarily different, but you're either DPing or ACing or is there like a positional goal that you want to be in, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that. Any person who works with a camera kind of has that romantic idea of becoming a director of photography. Though I make the point of distinction that that some of the higher ups that I look up to kind of make a distinction between director of photography and cinematographer, is that if you're a cinematographer, then you're entirely focused on crafting that image and painting with light. And if you call yourself a director of photography, then you're effectively taking some of the control away from the director, which I prefer the term cinematographer because it's sort of there's one director on set.
Yeah.
So ideally, that's kind of where I see myself hopefully getting. I'm going to keep my arms down.
Do you see yourself as a director or a director of photography?
A cinematographer, yeah.
Cinematographer. Is it somewhat a little bit offensive if people say director of photography?
No, it's not offensive. It's still a term of great pomp and circumstance. It's more so just that they're both correct. I know I don't correct people because then I come off as
as an asshole.
An asshole, yeah.
Yeah. You don't do that.
But yeah, I mean, I hop around in a lot of different roles in both grip and electric and gaffing and doing grip work and AC and camera operator when I get a chance to do that. For me, it's all of them make me a better operator of the camera. They make me work better with light. They make me work better with crew members. And so every single time I'm on set, when I'm not a cinematographer, I always see it as improving my own skills.
Yeah.
And if I'm on set with someone who knows more than I do, which I try and as often as possible get myself on a set where I'm not the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
Because then I can look at them, I can see their tricks, I can see what they're doing, and I can steal it.
You can see somebody's brain moving, when they're on set or they're giving grace to somebody, giving patience, letting an actor sort it out, or so, you can see wheels turning.
Yeah.
What has provided the most insight to camera operating you by working outside of it? Has it been gaffing? Has it been electric?
I think gaffing has been most useful, just because I think that's one thing that differentiates between a good cinematographer and a great cinematographer is how they can work with their crew and also how they can work with light. And it's sometimes that I see these crazy setups, and I look at the final image, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I see what you did there. But then there are other times where I'll be working with a cinematographer that puts up 2 lights.
Yeah.
And it's just little tweaks here and there, and all of a sudden, they tell me to plant the light there, and then I plant it, and then I look at the image and I go, wow, there's no need for anything more. Like that wraps it up.
It is disheartening sometimes to like be on a set, see how long it took to set that thing up, that lighting up, and then you see the final product and you're like, man, this is some old BS. It's just tough. It's very tough.
Yeah. No.
That's the worst. But no, I minimalism. Generally was talking about that a little bit as well. Like being a minimalist and like how can you get the most out of the little that you have. How did you get started in film?
That's I feel like a bit of an outsider, just because. So I went to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, MCAD, as it's known here.
Because I was making fun of you for.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean
but I was just saying it's so expensive. It's just
it is. It's absurd. Yeah. It's absurdly expensive, and it's a pretentious art college, and it has everything that goes along with that.
Okay.
But it's. Even my classmates there, it's I first picked up a camera when I was 8 years old, and I've been, making films with my friends forever. I'm extraordinarily late to the game. I realistically didn't hold a camera until about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And how I came upon film in general was a bit of an anomaly, as it was. I started my academic career at the U of M. And political science and anthropological linguistics, and bounced around there. And I mean, before then it was quantum physics. Before then it was criminal law. Like I've gone through, and it was one step after another. It was I actually, going way back, I first applied to the BFA program at the Guthrie, got in, and turned them down because I was 16 when I started at the U. Like full-time, graduated high school, Here we go. And I was just needling to get out of that tiny-ass town in Wisconsin where I went to high school. And I was like, I want to be an actor. Like, I loved being on stage, and I hadn't done much, camera-based acting. And somewhere my 16-year-old brain was like, holy shit, I don't have the world figured out in the slightest. Like, acting? How could I make a living doing that? Like, what am I thinking?
Decided to be a camera operator.
Right, yeah, no. And so I jumped ship from there, and I was like, what really fascinates me? Criminal law. Like, getting into the psychology of all of that, and arguing cases and logic, and there was something to that. But then as I started going down that path, I was like, wait a second, I can't do this. It was like, I don't know anyone who's a lawyer. I don't know anyone who's a lawyer, so I'm going to start off in the bottom of the barrel. That means a public defender. That means that, and I was sitting to myself going, I would be good enough at my job to keep very guilty people out of prison. And I was like, I can't live with that.
Keep very innocent people out of prison.
Oh, no, I know. But I'm, again, 16-year-old, I'm panicking. I'm having a midlife crisis before my life's even started.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, I can't do this. And I'm, sitting there, and I go, quantum physics, fascinating. Which is strange how I got there as well. But I started with that, and I was like, I love this applied math. Like, I can do hypothetical calculations of particles that may or may not even exist. I could do that all day. I could still, that still fascinates me. But all of the other math that was unapplied, I just couldn't do it. And there was so much of it. I couldn't slog through it. So then settled on poli-sci and anthropological linguistics, and I love languages. I'm not from this country. I moved over to the States full-time when I was 11. So learning languages, adapting to that, seeing how language changes around people, that's always fascinating.
You graduated at 16 because you had not been in the American school system.
All right. I also I got into this school, and this is now, of course, going down a tangent, but I basically looked at all the standards required by that school. I looked at the Wisconsin requirements, the Minnesota, the Illinois, the Michigan, and I basically approached the school board, and I was like, this is how I can do all of this in 3 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And they were just like,
cool, man.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So
that's quite the feat.
Yeah.
Quite the feat.
No, I was one of those kids.
Did you even start off at all in the BFA program?
No. I kind of, like, looking back, I was like, damn it, should have stuck. That would have kind of...
I don't...
Anyway.
Anthropological...
Linguistics.
Linguistics.
Get all that out of the way. And I'm sitting here, you know, like, cool, I have 2 degrees now. And I'm sitting here going, man, I just doomed myself to a life behind a desk. Because the 2 options with my degrees are basically become a diplomat, diplomat, a translator to a diplomat, or I teach. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not just going to be like, I'm going to start my own country. Here we go.
Build an island. You're welcome if you'd like.
No, and I was just like, I can't sit behind a desk. That would drive me mad.
Yeah.
Or at least not if I have some sort of ownership over my career.
Yeah.
So, and I'd recently gotten into CG, like doing 3D modeling and 3D animation.
Uh-huh.
And I was shooting the shit with a friend of mine, and he said, well, my brother actually does that out in Washington State. And so it was like, okay, cool. So I ended up chatting him up, sent him some of my stuff. He goes, dude, you should do this. Like, this is good. You're well on your way, and you've received no formal training. Like, look into this. So I thought, okay, looked around. MCAD had a program for animation. I applied, got in with my limited portfolio, even though they also required a 2D drawing portfolio, and I was like, I've never fucking drawn in my life. Are you kidding me? So they let me in on a probationary period because my drawing was so bad, but my CG work was as good as it was. And I pursued the animation program, and basically day 1 of the intro to animation program with the professor, who's basically the only professor who teaches any of the CG work there. And I was like, yeah, you know, this is because we had to show some of our work that we'd worked on. Mm-hmm. I start showing some of my pieces, and he just laughs and he talks to me after class. He goes, you're doing things that we don't cover until like the final class in the animation program. Okay. Because the fact that you and I could have a discussion about bump maps and normal maps and UV mapping, and he goes, and splines and IK. He goes, your
money's no good here.
That's basically what it is that he's just like, he's like, I'm going to tell you what's up because the animation program is so 2D focused at that school. He goes, you are going to be struggling uphill to accomplish something that you basically already know. And he goes, and the 3D classes are going to basically be a practice, like just a practice field for you. He goes, if you're okay with that, then cool, I'll help you. But I'm like, okay. And he says, otherwise, like, spend your first semester, figure some stuff out, like do your thing. And I took intro to film, and something just clicked. And I think it's the combination of the sheer science and the physics of the optics of the camera and the sensors and the celluloid and the chemistry and all that, and also, the puzzle solving that I have to do as a grip or a gaffer. It's like, okay, this is how I want to light the scene. Okay, now how do I get that done? I'm sitting here going, okay, there's, even just looking in your eyes here, I see the catch lights from all those windows back here. You have a big soft source over there, and I'm getting a nice greaser, a hit off your face from that small window. So it's sort of getting all those pieces to work together. And that sort of that logic flow and that puzzle solving, even as something as a grip, where I have to like build these crazy ass, shitty rigs and whatever just to make something work. And it's often, I'll sit back and look at the end result and go, I built that. That was good. So no, my path to this industry was extraordinarily convoluted. But realistically, I think that I'm happier now, even, when I didn't work a single day in the month of December this year. I'm happier now than I would have been.
Yeah, December got cold.
It got in a number of ways.
Do you follow Shitty Rigs on Instagram?
I do.
How many Shitty Rigs have you put together that would have been that would have made the cut?
Well, they actually did feature me.
Oh,
they have featured one of my Shitty Rigs, and
what was it?
There was There was one where I had stabilized a tripod I needed a shot looking straight up. And, didn't have a grip truck or anything like that. So I built this, cinder block rig to, hold the tripod as it was up, because I needed it to, tilt all the way up. So I needed to, look down and then tilt up. So there was just this ramp of cinder blocks, just random alley shit that I'd piled on top of the tripod legs. Things that I look at now and I go, ooh.
Have you ever just ultimately destroyed a camera putting together a rig like that?
Not yet. I almost dropped one when I was building an overhead rig where it was just a lot of C-arms and things just kind of stabilizing it, and luckily I didn't totally walk away, and our actors needed to be underneath it, and I didn't totally walk away, and I'm sitting here and all of a sudden I just hear, and the camera just drops down from its handle, and I'm just like, okay, all right, moving on.
Yeah. Moving on. No, that's very scary. What was the camera?
It was like a C300 Canon.
Oh,
so it had a nice big top handle that I was like, yeah, I could totally mount this to it. It'll be fine.
Fair enough. So now, moving forward, do you plan to go back to acting or quantum physics or?
Quantum physics, probably not. I think that ship has pretty well sailed. Yeah. I still end up looking up white papers in the middle of the night and going, oh, that's fascinating, and I'm tracking.
What are white papers?
It's basically just the scientific results of experiments, and it's basically I read lab reports for fun. That's the punchline.
Oh dear Lord.
Yeah.
Goodness.
But it's just because I find the field fascinating, and I find that as applications, because that field is so theoretical that a lot of the applications aren't fully known, because it's sort of when we do this to this particle, in these environments, it does that. And the rest of the scientific community goes, so? And then they go, I don't know. Who knows? This might be great. No, and so there's sort of this childlike wonder, and that sort of the engineer's smile.
Yeah.
It's just that small, quaint sort of that's we did a thing. That experiment worked. It wasn't a complete failure. There's something to that I still love. Acting, who knows?
Pick it up whenever you want.
Yeah.
Jump in front of the camera.
I got friends. It's okay. I got that taken care of.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's if anything, I've been pondering for a while, looking at just getting into voice work.
Yeah.
Just because even this voice, you don't necessarily think of as being particularly special or non-American, but that's because this is what a Midwestern American sounds like to me, and this is a grown and cultivated accent that realistically only shows cracks when I've been drinking a little bit too much, and occasionally people will point out that some of my phrases are wrong and that I hit some of my consonants too hard.
That's interesting. It's kind of scary almost. It's like you're a robot that's adapted to a human climate, geographical culture, and now you're emulating us.
Oh,
and we don't see the
Oh, you didn't hear? Vikings have kind of changed their methods over the years since the 1600s. Now we just blend in and
now it's
attack from within.
Double spies. Okay. So now moving forward, what is so December was cold. What's the idea now moving forward? Is it just to do more features, or just any work you can get? Do you have a script that you're like, this is the one? What's next?
No, I think so. I've developed this mindset about the amount of control that I effectively have across productions, be it as a cinematographer on a feature, or a gaffer on a short film, or grip on a music video, or whatever else might be. A lot of what I do is in service to someone else, so that as a cinematographer, my goal is to visually tell the story that the director and the writer wants to tell.
Yeah.
And figure out the best way to do that. And that's where I find my pride. Is not so much that it's I'm a cinematographer on this on this multi-million-dollar shoot. It's instead, it's much more that I see that the director sees their vision manifest. So I guess in terms of the work that I'd like to do, I'm not super attached to what the project is. As long as I get my paycheck. No, I mean there is some reality to that too. But I like working on short films for different reasons that I like working on music videos and I like working on features. Features, it's great to stay with a story for 15 to 40 days, depending on how insane the schedule is. And with short films, it's a quick little burst. You get to know everyone on set, you get cozy, and usually those are sometimes the biggest shit shows, but that's also where you learn to adapt. And those skills that you learn in those weird little run and gun, we're shooting this in my friend's basement shoots, are sometimes the skills that transfer really well to working on a feature. And it's that indie mentality. And I mean, it's sort of the working with people from LA or Atlanta or New York and Austin and Dallas. I run into so many times where it's like, we don't have this. We can't make this work. We don't have this piece of gear. And I'm just like, we got plenty. Like, we can make all of what you're talking about work. And I think that's also one of the things that's great about the Minnesota community in particular is that all of us kind of have that indie-based sharpness to our teeth. In that, whether we may not particularly care to, it's working those days that creep longer and longer. And that's, unfair to actors and crew ultimately, but, I've worked a 21-hour day.
Goodness, what?
That was my first feature that I ever worked on, actually. I don't know if I...
Well, no, don't say the feature, but the question is, what happened after the 15th hour? Like, did you start to fade and unravel?
Well, it was sort of... The crew kind of realized that it was like, oh shit, we're basically being held captive at this point. Like, until we finish this. And so it was sort of all right, we got to buckle down. We got to get this done. Like, there's no...
Did it get done?
Yeah, eventually. Then that 4-hour turnaround kicked in, and you're like...
wait, you only have 4 hours to sleep? That's crazy.
It was brutal. That entire feature was just...
Stuff.
That shit show.
Did the product turn out? Was it worth the...
It turned out. I mean, it was. I think we accomplished what the director wanted to.
See, and that's another thing on the language in film. Like, a lot of people have a great way of being unmarked and just presenting something as little to no negative connotations. And I appreciate that grace, but like sometimes you got to call a spade and be like, this
it was horseshit. Yeah. I mean, it was. If we put it this way. Will I watch the film again? Probably not. Is my life better for having watched it once? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't turn it off. So, I mean, that's at least a 4.
Yeah. But I mean, you did cringe a little when you saw the 21-hour day. Like the
yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's also me looking beyond the edges of the frame, which is something I think we're all guilty of. Sometimes where we look at something and go, yeah, and we don't actually look at the merits of it because we're too busy thinking, man, that day sucked.
I do have a little bit of from the feature I was in with that was like a Fox Searchlight film. It's a pretty quick scene. It does a full day. Like, it blows my mind how like film can really
it can distort your sense of time.
Oh, goodness.
It can distort your sense of time.
Well, it also, sometimes I find myself getting in the feels and like getting upset if something is taking so long and I know that it's simple, and I want to interject my words and say, no, this is how we, but I gotta check myself. I have to check myself constantly. on set.
I saw you checking yourself a couple of times in the last thing we worked on.
No, you were checking yourself too. There was somebody there were things that were happening, and I was just like, and
you just got to grit your teeth. You just got to be like, all right.
Also, you also have to let people on set, like, you have to let them go through it and then get out on the other end. And if you try to, it's like somebody who's sleepwalking. You ever try to? They say never try to wake somebody up if they're sleepwalking, because then they'll lose their shit and they'll just like go batshit crazy. Like their brain can't handle it. Like if somebody's emotionally going through their threads, like on set, it's like cool, do that. But if you interrupt and get in it, no,
it's chaos.
No,
it's chaos.
No, you get drugged into the Kraken. You can't do that. But that, and also when directors are trying to figure out what do I want? Should I just like you see them caught in their own like webs. Like it's those points, and I want to turn the question to you on that. Is it best to interject with the director and be like, hey, okay, we need you to just focus up and breathe, or do you just lay back and say, hey, whenever you're ready?
I think that learning the difference between the two is experience. And knowing when to do which, because sometimes it's literally like, all right, buddy, shit or get off the pot. Yeah. Like it's pull the trigger on something, and I think only once has it been where I legitimately just picked up the camera, moved it, and said, camera set, let's go. Where I just completely superseded. And I mean, that's never a good look. Because anytime, right. Well, I mean, this is one of those small indie, like, not first-time director, but starting off, and had been extraordinarily like, no, it's my way or the highway, which certainly there's a certain level of that, but you also have to remember that this is an extraordinarily collaborative medium.
Yeah.
So when someone just refuses to take anything and then proceeds to kind of waste everyone's time, it's like it's hard to not. I mean, and I was young at that. It was many moons ago. But the I think that usually it's sort of the getting close and just being like, all right, what is it you want to accomplish here?
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the most effective ways to, one, suggest to a director that I'm on your side.
Yeah.
I'm working with you, for you, whatever the director needs to hear.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of I come up with my suggestion. When it's like, well, we could do it this way. And usually from there, you can start to see things divergent. And if it's still like, no, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, how about this? Let's look at the way that I think will work. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't work, we can go from there.
Wow. Okay.
And just sort of making them see that there's a resolution.
Bartering a little, not bartering, but just like, let me be helpful to you. Like, because sometimes on sets, people can get the like, not martyrdom, but they're like, all of you are against me. Nobody wants to achieve.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
mutiny.
Yeah, now you're held hostage.
Been on those sets too.
Yeah, that's
well, not fun.
I mean, the year and a month sitcom that I worked on, like that was there was some days were hostage situations. Yeah.
Yikes.
But at the end of the day, nobody wants to be the person that is the cog or the wheel that just said, F it, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then the whole car breaks down, and then like you never get work again. To wrap this up, my question now is is there a story that you've been toying around with in your head, or a script that you've thought of or envisioned, or that's kind of repeatedly mused to you, that maybe you don't want to film someday, but you're kind of curious about it, or maybe you do want to film someday?
Yeah, I mean, there's one kind of story that's kind of bounced back and forth in my brain, and it's, well, there's a couple, but I mean that's just the nature of it, nature of people in this industry. We all have ideas. There's one that I think would be an extraordinarily effective film, but I'm not sure I'm the right person to tell it. But it is, in my experience in working with certain people and having conversations with others, and it's basically the concept is it's sort of a coming of age film about an asexual woman figuring out her sexuality in like her college years. Wow. So it's like everyone else is kind of, whether it's, they've gotten to college and they've started making decisions one way or another with their romantic lives, and basically she's just kind of felt like a late bloomer, like she never really got it, and her friends talk about like one of her guy friends talks about that he had sex with this chick or whatever, and it turned out to be explode and be awful, or there's this one of our other friends is just like head over heels, and there's opportunities to kind of explore LGBT relationships as well as the kind of heterosexual mindset. Yeah. But then ultimately you have this woman who's completely feels removed from everything. Yeah. And there's this one kind of scene where she's staring up, and this is the one scene that constantly comes back in my head, and she's just sitting up in the middle of the goddamn night. Yeah. And the sodium vapor streetlights streaming in and hitting the fan as it's spinning on her ceiling, just kind of casting shadows and glinting light down. And she kind of decides to try and explore herself sexually. Yeah. But there's no inherent gratification. There's no switch that triggers in her brain to be like, and she kind of has this moment where she thinks about, one of her, guy friends, and there's nothing. She thinks about one of her girlfriends that she's close with, and there's nothing. And she thinks about, random, celebrities pop off in her head, and there's just nothing. Nothing doing anything. And she, she's, having these flashbacks to, or these thoughts about pornography, and there's nothing. And it's just sort of
what that journey is, and
and there's just, and ultimately, the concept I have in my head is that she ends up basically asking this guy out because she feels pressured to by, all of her other friends. Not necessarily being like, you should get a boyfriend, but it's, whether it's her friends are trying to set her up, and she's just not into it, so she decides, okay, I need to wrestle some amount of control back in my life. Yeah. And she goes out on a date with this guy, and it turns out he's asexual as well. Oh. And then they both they have this moment where they both try and get into it because they think the other person wants it. Yeah. And it's sort of, then they eventually kind of have that discussion about this isn't, and they both realize kind of at the same time, and then they both end up gushing over the fact that they both thought that they were broken, and because that's something I have a number of friends who are asexual who kind of we end up chatting for God knows how long about the fact that there's a lot of weird pressures connected to sex and relationships.
Yeah, especially in society and what we're bombarded with via social media and via if not trillion-dollar industries based on aesthetics and the way that a human being is presented to create some type of sexual reaction. Right. It's effing everywhere, and so how does a person find themselves in that world? That's crazy.
And I just that's.
not crazy in a bad way, but that's a very intriguing story. I'd watch it. So make the damn thing, man. Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. Before we wrap up, what made you think that you were not the one to tell that story?
This may be a full discussion for another time.
Maybe another time. But I'm saying like Malcolm X, the movie was supposed to be directed by a white guy, and then Spike Lee came in and was like,
hey,
that's no.
And that's realistic. That's a simple way to end up putting it. That's my biggest, is that one, it's a woman exploring our own sexuality.
Yeah, and that's
and not only that, but it's an asexual. And I think that, and this is where it's sort of I've had a conversation with people, and it's sort of the token, well, I have black friends, I have gay friends, I have bi friends, I have transsexual friends, or whatever it is. But it's actually, it's in exploring this and talking with him, I was like, that's fascinating. Not as sort of let me as I'm not imperializing their strife, and and some of them goes, no, it's not a problem. It's just, this is just the way it is. Yeah. And they've come to terms with it, and I think that there it's sort of I want to explore it, but I kind of fear that inherent prosecution and I know that it's a minority voice, but it's extraordinarily loud.
No, I empathize with what you're saying. Like in making films where there are women like characters, like how do you write for that, or how do you direct that? And honestly, I don't think we'll get to any step two on that in this discussion. No. Which I think it'd be an interesting discussion down the line. Given that the audio works, we'll definitely try to have you back.
There, I think the only solution that I've come is finding a female writer to co-write, and a female director to ultimately, so that basically as I end up kind of filling the role of writer-producer, because ultimately I'd want to shoot that, because obviously that's where I have the story is visually told.
You want to create the picture, and
so is working with, and maybe it's using the writer, finding a female writer-director to work, hand in hand with, and so then she's directing, and then it becomes a much more collaborative process throughout the entire project. Okay. That's the one way my brain's like, that would be my safest route, I think.
Okay.
So
cool. Well, I look forward to it, and I hope that the rest of your work pays off your student loans in full.
Paying over $1,000 a month. Because I have, of course. Thank you, Toussaint.
Yeah, no problem. All right.